Hi there, dear listener. Laszlo here with a quick pre-roll message for you. Before we get started, I want to let you know there are all kinds of convenient ways for you to support my efforts to bring you all these podcast shows on Chinese history, Chinese sayings, and tea history. If you go to my website at teacup.media and click the support button at the top, you'll find a bunch of ways to show some appreciation. There's Patreon, where you can get early access to new episodes, exclusive content, and an invite to the Teacup Media Discord channel, and more. CHP Premium, that also has early access, exclusive episodes, and ad-free versions of the entire CHP back catalog. Plus, there's several other ways to donate to the show as well. Check the episode show notes for a link to that very page. And my deepest thanks for listening and supporting me and my humble efforts. Hey everyone, I'm back again with another Chinese Sayings podcast. Laszlo Montgomery here, as usual. Another good one today. A staple again, if I may add. I've heard and read this one more than a few times in my checkered career. To climb a tree to catch a fish. You could probably guess this Chengyu has something to do with attempting to achieve something that's quite impossible. 4 characters. Yuan Mu. 求鱼, climb a tree to catch a fish. Here's the breakdown of these 4 syllables. Yuan, a character with several meanings, none of which seem to have anything to do with climbing, but that's what it means in this example. And mu means wood or tree. So, yuan mu, in this case, means to climb a tree. 求 means to seek or to look for. And yu means a fish. 求鱼, to seek a fish. Yuan mu, climb a tree. 求鱼, look for a fish. To climb a tree to catch a fish. And like all these Chengyu presented to you at the Chinese Sayings podcast, there's a story behind this one. And without any further delay that might put us into stoppage time later, let me get on with it. The story of climb a tree to catch a fish goes all the way back to the Warring States period, the Zhou dynasty. I mentioned before the Zhou dynasty was divided up between the Western and Eastern Zhou. The Western and Eastern Zhou, and the Eastern Zhou was further divided up between the Spring and Autumn period, followed by the Warring States period. And this was the dynasty that witnessed the birth of core Chinese culture. This was the dynasty where the foundation was poured. It was a very fascinating time in ancient Chinese history. This was China's period equivalent to Europe's medieval period, with castles, fiefdoms, nobles, and knights in white satin. And the most famous guy to come out of that period by a landslide was Confucius. And Confucius's most famous follower back in the day was Mencius. In China, they know him as Mengzi. Mengzi's time on the good earth was from 372 to 289 BCE, 2,300 years ago. And no surprise that this Chengyu came straight out of his eponymous book called the Mengzi. This was the Warring States period in China. So China, back in those late 4th century, early 3rd century BCE times, was still all divided up into different states. There were a lot of them, but in the time we're talking about today, there were less than 10 left. And one of those states was the state of Qi in present-day Shandong province. The ruler there at the time when Mengzi walked the earth was King Xuan of Qi, and this king had grand designs on all the lands in China and seemed determined to conquer everyone by force of arms. Mengzi was also from the state of Qi, and he was contemporary to this Qi King Xuan. And Mengzi was a regular visitor to the king, who called Mengzi to the palace often to seek his sagacious advice. Mengzi's main argument to the king, when he was told of King Xuan's big plans to conquer the world, was that he should consider a more benevolent path to leadership instead. If he led through benevolence and wisdom, people from other lands would flock to him and accept his leadership and authority based on the goodness he exhibited. Well, this King Xuan of Qi was looking for a faster route to power, and he was already making plans to conquer the states adjacent to him. But his real end game was to take over the world, which in those days meant China. Meng Zi tried to talk him out of this and asked him, did he not have enough treasure and money, the best food whenever he wanted it, works of priceless art hanging in his palace, enough royal robes in his wardrobe? Were there not enough people at his beck and call 24 hours a day? What is it that made him so unsatisfied with his current lot in life? What more did he want that he didn't already have? King Xuan said, all those material things are meaningless. That's not what he was after. So Meng Zi just looked at him, and he concluded that this royal was just trying to take over the whole world for no other reason than to have everyone bow down to him. Meng Zi chided him that to do something like this militarily was like climbing a tree to catch a fish. The king looked at Meng Zi and asked, is it really that hopeless, like climbing a tree to catch a fish? Meng Zi said it's worse than that. If you climb a tree but don't catch any fish, no big deal. You tried something that was impossible, but nobody got hurt. But if you try and conquer the world through force of arms, you'll bring calamity on yourself, your house, and your kingdom. How are you, one single kingdom, going to take out the other 8 kingdoms? You're not even the most powerful. He told King Xuan, it's always the strong kingdoms who defeat the weaker ones, and those with many soldiers who defeat those with too few. He plainly told his king, if you try to carry out your grand scheme, you're guaranteed to fail. And with advice like that, good King Xuan of Qi reconsidered and decided to backburner his plans. So climbing a tree to catch a fish means you're wasting your time trying to do the impossible. You're totally going about it the wrong way. You're not going to get what you want. Yuan mu qiu yu. You're climbing a tree to catch a fish. And we all know fish don't live in trees. So this is another nice example of how Chinese Chengyu works. 4-character phrase, and has a nice historic backstory to it with a nice moral. Yuan mu qiu yu. To climb a tree to catch a fish. Thank you, Meng Zi, for such profundity. Okay, that's going to be it for this time. This is Laszlo Montgomery signing off from LA and saying, stay out of the trees if you're looking to catch fish. Thanks a million for listening, and I cordially welcome every single one of you to go check out our brother and sister podcasts at teacup.media, the China History Podcast, and the Tea History Podcast. Everything, all in one place for your inconvenience at teacup.media. You won't be sorry. Take care, everyone, and please be my guest next time for another delectable episode of the Chinese Sayings Podcast.